Good evening and welcome to Political Update. I'm your host, Christopher Devine, and today we have with us Democratic candidate for Norfolk, Bristol, and Middlesex State Senate, Dylan Hayre. Thank you for being with us
Thank
today.
you. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Sure, so tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. So like you said, my name is Dylan Hayre. I'm a lifelong resident of Natick. I'm the son of immigrants. I earned my bachelor and my law degree from Boston College. I currently serve as an elected member of Natick Town Meeting. I've served in the past as the chair of the Democratic Town Committee in Natick. But one thing I say to everyone I meet is if there's only one thing you remember about me, let it be this, that I've always been someone who's demonstrated a commitment to putting words into action. So, for example, I didn't just say that I care about elders and senior citizens in our town. I, at the age of 26, became the chair of the Council on Aging in Natick. I don't just say that I care about public schools and teachers. I actually earned my master in education at the same time as my law degree, so I could learn how to be a better advocate for our schools. I don't just say that I care about veterans and soldiers. I actually started my own law practice called Lawyer for Soldiers, where I focus on representing veterans and military families in our courts. So I've been involved in a number of ways for a number of years, whether it's politically or locally or civically or just through my work that I do as an attorney. And having come now to a point where we're campaigning for this seat, it's been a good ride, and enjoying letting people get to know me a little bit and seeing how my story, I think, resonates with a lot of people in this district.
Sure, so why did you decide to run for state senate?
Sure, well, I think there are a couple reasons. First, you look at the challenges that people were facing that I got to know firsthand as the chair of the Council on Aging in Natick, as a town meeting member, as an attorney who works with veterans. And I realized very quickly that the challenges these folks are facing are the challenges that a lot of people are facing. Certainly there can be some unique lenses through which you look at those challenges and some of the things that people are working through. But looking across the district, you saw a lot of people who were kind of in an uphill battle. And I knew that my experience and I think my work ethic and my general vision for what this state senator can be, it really inspired me to become a part of the conversation and to help other people add their voices to the conversation.
So what were some of those issues that you saw as you spent your time across the district that people were facing?
Well, they range. I mean, one of the things I love about this district is the tremendous diversity, economically, politically, that you see in this district. Remember, it runs from Wayland down to Attleboro. So the challenges range from folks who are trying to find a way to pay for college, folks who are still trying to find a job, been unemployed for years at a time, folks who are trying to strengthen their public schools, folks who are trying to find a way to make transportation more accessible and affordable, people who are trying to fight homelessness in some of these districts, trying to fight poverty, battling for a higher minimum wage. So I think it really depends on the town that you're in. And no matter who you meet, you see that the commonality is that there's a lot of people who are working hard to make their communities better. And I was inspired to help be a part of that in each of these towns.
Okay, so your campaign is focusing on three main issues. The first one being improving education in the district, second being improving transparency in the State House, and the third being veterans issues. So let's start off with education.
Sure.
Do you have any plans on how you will address that if elected senator?
Sure, I think we should have a couple goals in this state for the next few years with respect to education. Number one is we need to revisit the Chapter 70 formula that we use to fund our public schools. That hasn't been updated in a number of years, and there are certain parts of it that have, quite frankly, never been updated. We need to have a more realistic valuation of how much it costs to retain good teachers and good talent. We need to have a better understanding of how much it costs to educate students with special needs. We need to really figure out how we can provide more services and programs both during and after the school day, and if that's something we can incorporate into Chapter 70 a little bit better. And we certainly need to do a better job, I think, of asking ourselves whether or not the foundation budget, the money we say needs to be spent on education is high enough. We, I think, need to take a better look at that and reassess how much we are prioritizing education in our budget. Secondly, I've talked a lot about finding ways to expand the methods we use to assess student success. Right now, as I'm sure you know, that we use a lot of standardized testing in this state and across the country. We're switching to a new system of testing. We're adopting some of the Common Core, but I still think that we need to look at ways where we can reward, cultivate, cherish, and learn from student diversity and from the diverse talents and interests, and get away from this idea of forced conformity based on a test that's given once a year.
So you opposed to standardized testing, or just looking for new ways to to bring that
Sure.
into the school systems?
I am wary of the effect that standardized testing is beginning to have on our schools, and I think you're seeing it across the country, and I think you're certainly starting to see some support for moving away from it in the state. It's a long process. We can't sit up here and say, well, let's just end standardized testing. It's a more complicated question than that. But I certainly think we do need to find a way to diversify the tools that we're using to measure our student success and to measure the strength of our schools.
Okay, so let's talk about the transparency in the State House. To date, do you think that they have been doing a good job on keeping the State House transparent, letting voters know what's going on, and keeping them informed?
Well, I think there's a lot of senators and representatives who are doing everything they can, whether it's newsletters or using social media effectively, or putting links online saying, here's the debate that we're having today. You can watch it live here. But I think that unfortunately a lot of the folks on Beacon Hill are limited by the capabilities that are currently available to them. For example, I can go online and I can find the Senate session or the House session on video, and I can watch it and I can sort of follow what's happening. But it's hard sometimes to see which bills they're talking about, or to find that bill to have it up on the screen with you as you watch. It can be a little hard to figure out what the language of the bill actually means. Sometimes you don't really know, when the votes are being taken, or what the votes actually mean. And so transparency doesn't just mean putting things online and saying to everyone, hey, here it is. It means making it actually accessible, making sure that the information that we're putting out there can be used and understood by the average voters who we're elected to serve.
So what are your plans to improve the transparency?
Well, I think there's been some focus with respect to using some of the online resources a little bit better, making the videos more accessible, putting votes online, putting roll call votes online. I'd love to see an effort to translate some of the bills in the statutes that are being debated into plain English, plain language. Sometimes you can look for a bill now. You can go on to malegislature.gov and type the number of a bill and read it and see exactly where it fits into the general laws. But I've heard from a lot of people who have tried to look at those bills and, quite frankly, don't really understand how they fit into the overall picture. And so I think there's some room there to grow and to utilize the technology that's available, and also harness the curiosity of a lot of folks and say, what can we do better to help you understand this information?
Okay, so moving on to veterans issues. You do, as you said, you started a law practice helping out veterans. You do have a history with that. So what are some of the issues that they're facing right now?
Well, I think for a lot of veterans, priority number one for the new veterans, the folks who are coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan, is developing a basic skill set, or translating the skill set they have to the employment opportunities that are available. Massachusetts has passed two versions of what we call the Valor Act. Valor Act 2 was actually just passed by both houses a few days ago. And that does lay a lot of the groundwork for making licensure an easier process for veterans, for making educational attainment an easier and more affordable process for veterans. Valor Act 1 did a lot to ensure that veterans get access to the benefits they need from the state, and Valor Act 2 is now strengthening some of the tools and some of the resources that are in place, to find those resources. But I think there's still a lot of work left to do for those guys, as far as making sure that transitional skills are being rewarded, that job opportunities are made available, that the welcome home bonus continues to be well funded, maybe even increased if we can. But then you also have veterans from Vietnam, from Gulf War I, guys who are a little bit older, guys and girls who are a little bit older, folks who've been struggling with some issues for a much longer time. And I think we always need to be cognizant of the fact that when we're dealing with veterans issues, there are very different generations of veterans, and they approach veteran services and resources very differently.
So how would you approach these issues if elected? What would you do to really help them?
Well, one of the things that Secretary of Veteran Services in Massachusetts, Coleman Nee, talks a lot about is community-based solutions, public-private partnerships that are focused within a community where veterans in that community are able to collaborate and communicate with one another to help build towards resources, or to help make resources available, or to help make the newer veterans aware of the resources. There's a lot of VFW halls and American Legion halls, and those are utilized fairly well, I think, by some of the older veterans, but some of the newer veterans just don't want to go to those places. They're more interested in being at home with their families most evenings. So finding a way to tap into what they're looking at. Putting stuff up on Facebook, on social media, making sure that when there are veterans who have gained access to resources, that we maybe harness their energy and make them a mentor for other veterans. And promoting their ability to foster that collaboration on a state level, I think, will be crucial. Additionally, you're seeing, for veterans involved in the criminal justice system, this growth of veterans treatment courts. There's one in Dedham, one just opened up in Boston. I'd like to see one in every county in the state for veterans who have fallen on hard times and need a little bit of help, who it doesn't make sense for them to be involved in the criminal justice system. Maybe having that opportunity for some of these folks to get back on track is vital. You don't want anyone falling through the cracks. So I think there's a multifaceted approach we need to take. But we definitely, I think, always need to remember that veterans are a large, diverse group, and there's a lot of diverse needs that come with that.
Okay, so our final issue that we're going to briefly touch base upon, it seems to be an issue that's facing the state and also the entire country right now, and that's raising the minimum wage.
Of course.
It has, people can argue both ways, whether it would help or decline business revenue. I guess I can put it that way. So what are your thoughts on the minimum wage?
Well, the first thing I say to folks, when we're talking about minimum wage, let's keep in mind that even the minimum wage, if it were to be raised to $11 or $10.50 an hour, is not a living wage for a lot of folks. A living wage is a lot higher for a lot of people. So it's important that we at least start by considering how high we can get the minimum wage without, I think, doing any damage to the economy. Now, that damage is disputed, right? You look at the Congressional Budget Office on the federal level, and they say, well, there could be 500,000 jobs that are lost if you raise the minimum wage, but there could also be millions of people who are helped to pull out of poverty. I think you see similar arguments on the state level. Most of the data I've seen, quite frankly, indicates that job losses will be minimal at most. And I think there are other ways to lower the cost of doing business in this state without putting those cuts and those sacrifices on the backs of workers who are working one or two jobs, supporting a family, trying to be home with their children or with their parents. These are not the folks who we should be asking to continue to sacrifice so that we can find a way to make Massachusetts as business friendly as possible. So I'm very in favor of raising the minimum wage. Quite frankly, I wish we started out with a higher number than the numbers that are currently being discussed. Like I said, my goal is to get close to a living wage, and then maybe have some discussions about how businesses of different sizes are able to adapt to paying that higher wage.
Okay, so we're going to finish off on this final question. Tell us what, in your own words, what you think differentiates you from the two other candidates, your candidate in the primary race and the incumbent senator. What differentiates you from them?
Sure. I think I'll say a couple things about that. Number one is my background. My mom, like I said, was born in India, raised in England. She came to this country in the early 80s with a medical degree and just a few dollars in her pocket. Luckily, she'd already had her flight booked down to Jackson, Mississippi, where she had her first job, and she was able to find a roommate on her first day at work. But she struggled, and she fought hard. And she was able to build her own medical practice that she's had in Needham for 25 years. And her story, more than anything else, taught me the value of hard work, taught me the value of fighting for what you believe in. And that is something that I will carry with me as I commit every ounce of what I have to doing this job to the best of my ability. I'll never forget where I came from and never forget the sacrifices people made to help me be where I'm at today. I think also the vision that I have for this seat. Like I said, the economic diversity of this seat is immense, of this district. It ranges in unemployment from 3.2% to upwards to 10%. Education, there's disparities in education in the district. But that, I think, is also the district's greatest strength. Because whoever's in this seat cannot just be a part of the conversations on Beacon Hill. Whoever's in this seat should really help lead those conversations. And I would argue that whoever serves this state Senate district as their senator can be someone who helps frame the debate in Massachusetts going forward for years to come. So I bring not just the vision of wanting to get stuff done and wanting to work hard to do it, but also I have a lot of great relationships already with a number of people, legislators on Beacon Hill. So even if I were to go in there and people say, oh, you're only going to be a freshman, what could you possibly do? I think I could do a lot because I think I bring with that freshman title a lot of great relationships and a lot of camaraderie with some people who are already there. People I can learn from, people who can help me, people who I know are interested in the things I'm interested in, who can help advance the agenda and push the agenda going forward. So my background, my vision, and like I said, the relationships that I bring with me into this job, if I'm lucky enough to get it, I think are what separate me from the field, and I think are what prepare me to do this job to the best of my ability.
Okay, Dylan, well, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. We wish you the best of luck on your campaign.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm Christopher Devine, and this has been Political Update.